This time I'll call the July 11th, 2023 County Council Workshop to order. Our first item for discussion is discussion regarding the unincorporated recreation tax allocations. Council will remember the last we left this off was our fourth reading of the budget. It was brought back up to refer this back to workshop with the understanding that given the way it was proposed in the budget, so as not to cause a tax increase to the special tax district, that one of the allocations would be fixed, that being the Lake Wiley allocation, which is 383,606, was fixed. And the discussion for council wished to have a little bit more discussion about how to divide the remaining pieces. One of the questions that I know came up from the council as a whole was to get some feedback and some direction, well, clarification from management on the population numbers. Have you been able to get that?
I was, yes. There was some discrepancy in the last spreadsheet that you received, and what you have in front of you is the first page is the recreation funding, and staff recommended it be allocated, and that really just divided up the new money in the same proportion that it was divided last year. The second page is what was presented by the municipalities and shows how they would distribute it based on school district population, as I understand it. And then the
municipal proposal is the colored?
That's correct.
All right.
And the final proposal, I think, was provided to us by Mr. Huckabee, and that's where some of the confusion came in. And specifically is, if you look at the first column, the unincorporated population of Clover, Lake Wiley was 38,000 people. But when you looked at it as of June 23, it had dropped to 25. And that really didn't make sense to anybody in the room. And there's a reason for that, is because when they had calculated these numbers, they had considered Lake Wiley a recreation provider, and they had removed the people in the tax district out of there, which they should not have done. So what we have is revised numbers on that, and the actual population is very close because they're projected out to 2022 versus 2023. You have the census based in 2020. And those are good, solid numbers. We project population, and I think the COG does, every year in between the 10-year census. So the column on your left with the 38,000 is much closer to the actual population in the Clover Fort Mill district.
Was there an effort to try and determine what the unincorporated populations are for the individuals within each school district?
Well, yes. And that's how they're broken down. So for instance, York School District's 24,086.
I'm sorry, I don't mean school district. I'm saying if we take the unincorporated population that you guys, that we all agree on as, I guess, is the right population number from the municipality's proposal, as well as this other one that we use, that left column, and that's the most accurate.
Very close, yes.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to ask, has there been any effort to try and identify with any specificity which, for instance, Clover, Lake Wiley, is there a distinction? That 38,000, how that's divided up?
It's just the unincorporated population of the school district.
So we don't know.
We don't try to divide it up between Clover and Lake Wiley,
Okay.
just like we don't try to divide it up between Sharon, Hickory Grove, and York. There was kind of an arbitrary division of the funding for those, not strictly based on a population model, but Hickory Grove, Smyrna, Sharon were all considered to be about the same, just like Fort Mill TVK is considered to be about the same. I think Clover Lake Wiley was considered from the standpoint of funding from the, as recommended by the municipalities.
So let me ask you a quick question. So based on this document here, these are what you say are the accurate numbers on page 2.
In the first column, unincorporated population.
Oh, yeah, on the first one, okay. So, and then, so the numbers that the rec committee did look at are in line with the numbers that you have here, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay. So I've got a proposal, all right?
I have one too.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and throw mine out and we'll take it from there. So based on what I did, after these numbers, so based on what I've got here, and that matches up with the numbers I wrote down. York District 1 gets $158,998, based on what the allocation was from the staff, what they recommended. Clover Lake Wiley gets $596,980, based on what the staff recommended. Rock Hill gets $457,381, based on what the staff recommended. And Fort Mill TGK gets $377,142. $377,142. Now, based on those numbers, this was what the staff recommended. Okay, based on, and this is following the same metrics here. When I compared what the rec funding group recommended, they recommended for District 1 $260,916. That's a difference of $101,000 $101,918. For Lake Wiley Clover, there was a recommendation of $403,828. That's a plus of $143,152. All right. For Rock Hill, there was roughly a difference between their allocation of $467 to what they got of $457. There's roughly a $10,000 difference in what they're getting as opposed to what they recommended. However, in Fort Mill, the difference between what was proposed of $458, $457 is a difference of $81,315. As you look at these numbers and you look at the allocation and the amount, you look at, and again, I'm looking at because the numbers have been validated. We look at the Fort Mill TGK area, roughly 28%. We're looking at Rock Hill, roughly 29%. Clover Lake Wiley, 26%. We're looking at York of 17%. My recommendation is to make a $50,000 change to this allocation. We've already hard-coded in the 383,606 for Lake Wiley. That's been discussed as Christy mentioned based on our last meeting. However, my recommendation would be to allocate $10,000 more to York. That would bring them up to $168,998. I would recommend adding a $10,000 more to Rock Hill. That would bring them up to the allocation they were expecting of $467,381. And I would recommend 30,000 of it, additional 30,000 be added into the Fort Mill TGK. That would bring them from $377,142 up to $407,142. And it would at least get them closer to what the allocation should have been based on what the rec department came back with. The difference in the 50,000, I think the difference should come out of Clover and Lake Wiley. Since Lake Wiley already is allocated to 383,606, I think the difference I would recommend to come out of the 50,000, which is allocated over towards Clover. Now, again, this is my proposal. I think it helps to balance out things a little bit closer. And you look again, when you look at Fort Mill and you look at the numbers, for example, Fort Mill, based on these numbers, would be getting one on the staff's numbers of 188,571. Okay, But their population in the unincorporated area is increased immense, along with TEK, and they're getting the same allocation. I think this is balancing the scales more based on the number of people in these unincorporated areas, and this would be my recommendation if we can get it approved.
What's the reasoning behind giving, districts, 1 and 3 $10,000? Where'd that number, how'd you get
Well,
that?
I just think when I look at the numbers, you look at Rock Hill and you look at the number of parks they have and you look at the number of people. I think they should be brought up with 10,000 to at least get them to what the rec funding group has thought they should be. I think that York, again, I think giving York at least $10,000, I think is fair. Or I think at least that helps them and it brings them up closer. Fort Mill and TEK, again, I would say I would like to get more for Fort Mill and TEK, but again, we're in a discussion here, and I think this is a fair and balanced approach to it, and I think it at least brings things closer to what it should be.
Madam Chair.
Can you just run down the numbers right quick again, Tom, just what the proposal is, so I got that right?
The proposal would be to bring Fort Mill and TEK up to 407,142, which is a 30,000 increase. The proposal would be to bring Rock Hill up $10,000 to 467,381. The next one for Clover Lake Wiley would stay at 383,606. Clover would go to 163,374. And for York, you would go from 158,998 to 168,998. 50,000.
What was tell me the last one again, I'm sorry.
You're just adding $10,000 to.
Sure, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't like the idea of just saying, give this group, give that group, take away from this group. We're supposed to be working on a formula.
Agreed.
That's where we're supposed to be. You know, everybody wants to say Rock Hill gets this, Fort Mill gets this. We're gonna be back in the same boat next year doing the same thing, and that's not the way it was supposed to even went last year. We settled for doing this last year. We're gonna settle for doing it again this year, and I'll be damned if I'll be spending my summer again next year doing it. This is the first time in 13 years we've ever had a workshop in July, figuring out stuff for municipalities. We need a formula. We don't need to just be allocating money. Unless y'all wanna do this again every year and have Rock Hill, York, Clover, Fort Mill, Lake Wiley fighting every single year, we need a formula. I'm not gonna support anything that doesn't say, here's the formula going forward for next year, the following year, 2025, 26, 27, because we've tried school district population, school district numbers, population numbers, we've tried participation numbers. We gotta figure this out. This is not the right way to do it.
so what are you proposing? I think I heard you say you got a proposal. What
The
was your-
proposal is we need to use all three measures. Some say they can't record participation. We got population, we got school district. We can have a weighted average with school district numbers, population numbers, and participation. Staff can figure this out. Don't put it on us, because at this point, it's politics. If staff can say, here's a formula that we can go by, let's go by a formula. Because
Participation, population, what was the other element?
School district enrollment. I mean, it's ridiculous. And those of us in the room, remember, we were this close to taking this funding away and letting everybody fend for themselves. But we settled last year to do it that way. We're supposed to work on a formula. A formula is, unless we just all gonna agree that every year we're gonna give up Tuesday afternoon and come in here during the middle of the summer and hammer this out and say, well, Fort Mill needs a little more. York needs a little more. Rock Hill needs a little more. But I would much rather say, here's the formula, we plug it in, put that top dollar number, what the rec funding is gonna be, and it spits out who gets what. It takes the politics out of it. It's not fun to come in and say, let's take money from this municipality, let's take money from this municipality to give to this one. It's just not right, you know.
So are you, just so I'm clear with your suggestion, and I don't think anyone disagrees with trying to at least come up with some sort of formula that avoids this going forward. those three topics that you identified are, I think are important ones. How, are you saying for us to give that back to staff? Because staff made a recommendation.
Well, staff made a recommendation on the money. We had some who, staff took all their time and did it, and we still had people on this council say, no, I don't like that. Well, if we have a formula, it's not whether you like it or not, it's the formula.
I guess,
So-
is there a more, do you,
I don't have a concrete, nope, but we need to utilize all the measurables that we can look at, school district numbers, population of unincorporated. And these municipalities are gonna have to start reporting participation, because that's what this money is for, to cover the costs of unincorporated citizens, mainly youth, young adults, participating in these organized sports or recreation. At this point, it's basically a money grab. If without participation numbers, it's a money grab. Without using some sensible numbers from the school district, it's a money grab. And I like to see municipalities come to fight over county money, because that's basically what you guys are doing, fighting over money that we're collecting to give to you.
I guess just so I'm clear, the proposal that was presented by the municipal entities, their proposal mirrored exactly the unincorporated population.
That's my
That's
understanding.
correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Madam Chair.
So that was a strict, sure.
Madam Chair, if I could, if everybody would go to this page for 1 second, the shaded ink and the blue. Because I want to address kind of what Bump is saying and what Tom has said thus far. Okay, if you look at this sheet, it's showing the 2022 census. There's 152,560 people in the unincorporated area of York County, right? And we agree on that. Or our management agrees on that, and COG agrees on that, because they hold the numbers. So now, if you look at the percentages, so if you say, okay, if York, Hickory Grove, McConnell, Sharon, and Smyrna in number one, if their unincorporated population is 25,027 people, right? Is that what it says? Yep. So 25,027 people on a percentage of 152,560 is 16.4%. Y'all agree or disagree? We agree. Okay, so then if you take 38,735 for District 2, that is 25.39%. If you do the math, we've done the math, that is it. And if you take 44,823, that's 29.38%. If you take 43,975 for Fort Milton, okay, it's 28.82%. So then if you take those percentages and you look for a column on here that matches those percentages, it would be the blue column on the right. Okay, but then if you look at the blue column on the right, where are the discrepancies in this? Number one, Hickory Grove, McConnell, Sharon, Smyrna should not be getting the recommended allocation of $10,600. Some of them don't even have recreation. So there's number one, issue number one. That should be addressed. Whether it's addressed today or addressed in the future, that should probably be addressed. Number two, if you take the percentages, and this is complicated for District 2, Clover and Lake Wiley, that's a combined number. So that's a combined number of 38,735 people. So 25.39% of $1,590,501 is what Tom said. It's $403,000, which is what the RAC committee recommended, the 201 and the 201 divided by 2, right? So then you say, I have spent a little bit of time on this since you last spoke. So then you say, well, the difficulty is that with Clover, we know where Clover is because it's a municipal association. We don't know, or we have never defined the boundaries of Lake Wiley. So we don't know what is Lake Wiley unincorporated area. So that's a challenge I guess somebody would have to pursue. But, so Clover and Lake Wiley, the numbers should be, as Tom said, 403,828 by the formula. So to answer your question, Bump, this is the formula, this applies.
This is the formula that we're going by with population.
Right, well, that's.
If that's the sole thing that we're looking at.
Right, so then you keep going down, Rock Hill, and listen, I represent District 6, I'm not here pushing Rock Hill, Fort Mill, I'm not pushing anybody. As I said in meetings, I'm looking at how you calculate it, and then we worry about the rest, and I'll get to that in just one second. So then, if you go down and you look at the percentages, it calculates out. So then, the issue is, at our last meeting, I didn't vote for it, you all voted to approve, and I respect it, that because the budget requires Lake Wiley to get $383,606, which if you go back to the rec committee recommendation, $403,000 basically is what they recommended, and Lake Wiley got $383, so that means Clover gets $20,000 if you go by the formula, but that doesn't really work, right? No, that doesn't work. So, in my opinion, the question on hand is this tonight. $383,606 allocated to Lake Wiley. You've already approved that. You've told management to go with that. That leaves 75.88% of $1,590,501. This group's got to figure out how to allocate. And how are you gonna do that? Like Bump said, because the formula, we've disrupted the formula. The formula does not apply. So how do you do that? And I will say, and this is the last thing I'm gonna say, is that you've already voted for the 383, so there's no need in arguing over that. I'm not arguing over that. That's a conversation for next year. But you gotta figure out how you're gonna allocate 75.88% of $1,590,501. So you gotta do that. And then I think for next year, maybe we need to have a conversation about what is it that we're looking for in York County from a park perspective? And maybe all county citizens need to contribute towards a recreation tax for the entire county. So if we're really gonna make an investment in the counties of York, in the parks in York County, what does that look like? What is our need? Is our need a 1.5 mil across the board for all citizens in York County? I don't know. Is it a half a point? Is it 0.8 of a point? I don't know what it is. But maybe we need to define our need and then go back and reevaluate next year, not this year, but reevaluate what this tax really is doing for us. Anyway, that's.
So just so I'm clear and understand your proposal,
I didn't have a proposal.
Well-
I just wanted everybody to understand that there is a formula, and the formula was used.
population,
but
unincorporated
The
population.
deviated number really is the Lake Wiley number. But if we're gonna go back through it, you really ought to look at the first category, number 1, or look at how that money's allocated, because it's probably not properly allocated to the smaller municipalities that we're giving money to.
So let me just.
Well, hang on, let me ask a couple
Okay.
questions, and this goes back to Bump's proposal too. I mean, we obviously have the population, unincorporated population numbers, that's capable of percentages. The school population, am I missing that? Is that in one of these charts?
It's
Not that I'm aware of.
The school
Is it-
numbers are not in the chart. This is the unincorporated numbers.
Is there a
but
way to figure that out?
They can, but it's not exact. Is that
Student
right?
population?
Correct.
I think is what we're talking about.
Every district has a
The
number.
how many students attend in those districts? Yeah, I'm sure.
And there's
that's
no way to
what-
parse out unincorporated. To
Well,
Watts's
you
point,
can estimate.
this tax is only assessed on unincorporated
Right.
population.
Yeah, that, I don't know how they track it, there's, we'd have to know the addresses of every student that attend, and I don't know that they track them for purposes of.
So there's really no way to find out the school population unincorporated people. We could possibly get a number.
You could come up with an average per household, but it would not be exact. That's the
Yeah,
question.
and I don't think they track statistics in that way at the schools.
Okay.
So we can make.
Before we let, I want everybody to get a chance to speak. So are there any other council members who have any specific proposals that they want to kind of put out here for us to consider before we continue to debate? Does anybody want the floor? That's everyone who's spoken.
Yeah, so let me just follow up on, this proposal is a shot at trying to get things more fair and balanced. I 100% agree, we need to have a formula, 100%. I think the formula based on unincorporated area is a solid formula. Where we ran into this, and I think when we were given the fact that we had to have a guaranteed 383,606 as an allocation in the budget, I don't feel like that is not a fair and balanced approach, okay? I think that we have a mechanism here based on what the rec groups did, based on actual population, that is a scale. Now, if there's requirements in Lake Wiley, then for additional monies, I think that should be something we talk on a separate line, separate from the rec funding. I think that's a separate discussion. I know this year it didn't happen, but I think moving forward, we need to make sure that's a separate discussion and not associated.
So I have a question. This is what my ultimate request would be. We do know what the boundaries of Lake Wiley are as far as rec, because we have the Lake Wiley, we have the two numbers are the Clover unincorporated side and then the tax district. We have a tax district that is a defined number. So the people in that tax district pay in 1.5 mils. If I could make a proposal that would be accepted and everybody would feel like it would be fair, what I would like to do is, because we can't eliminate that 1.5 mil tax, but what we can do is offset that tax so that Lake Wiley is just level. We're at ground zero, and then the other municipalities can divide up based on whatever formula you come up with, because the kink in the whole formula is Lake Wiley, because we are there's some confusion. People think that that what we're paying in for Field Day Park has to do with this, and it's what we're paying in for Field Day Park is a totally separate tax. So what we use this money for is we are basically looking to recoup the money that the taxpayers in Lake Wiley pay in to rec funding. So if we could recoup our money, 100% of our money, you can have all the rest of it, and you can divide it however you want to divide it.
What is that number?
It's more than the 383, it's probably closer to $500,000, maybe.
We pay in 34% of the total funding. So we're paying in 34%. So y'all are here tonight talking about how you're going to divide up the money that the people in the Lake Wiley tax district pay in. That's the rub for me and for my taxpayers, because you're taking money from Lake Wiley and you're dividing it up and you're trying to balance it and say, let's give 10,000 over here, 10,000 over here, and 30,000 here, without any consideration that money has come from one of the entities that qualifies to receive the money. So my request, and I think it's the most fair thing, is we don't want to get any part of the allocation. We don't want any of the allocation.
Back what you put in.
We just want back what we put in. It's a 1.5 mil savings to the people in the Lake Wiley Recreation Tax District. And then you can take everything else. You can even take the growth. I mean, the growth money that comes from all around the county, you'll divide that up every year. We're not going to come back and ask for any more than we put in. We would like to continue to get what we put in. So there's going to be some growth there for us as well, but we're not gaining anything. We're just getting back what we put in. And I think that's the most fair way. And then divide the rest of it up.
We still need a formula.
What is that
You
number?
do need
What
a
is that
formula.
number, though, if you're proposing that? If you're proposing that Lake Wiley's allocation be all of what it put in, what are you
What's
saying?
1.5 mil generated?
I'm talking about the Lake Wiley.
No, for
34% of the total amount that you're trying to allocate here. So it's out of the,
Approximately $500,000.
yeah,
How much?
out of the
0.34?
152,560, you're 0.34% of that is.
See, it always increases, so you can't really do the growth, but you're saying 34% of the 1,590?
That's what we put in.
So you're asking for Lake Wiley's to go to $540,000.
I'm asking for us to be able to get back what we put in. and then we don't have to have this discussion next year or the year after, as long as the municipalities are dividing up everything that comes from all of the rest of the unincorporated areas of the county.
So right now, what you're saying, at 383, you're actually contributing to the fund.
We are. A lot.
Yeah.
So you would take, so Clover, we wouldn't have Clover and Lake Wiley in the same little box right here. Clover would be allocated the same way the other municipalities are allocated. Because they're not paying in, the Clover that's on this is not unincorporated Clover, it's the town of Clover.
Madam Chair, I think I respect what you're saying, but y'all have already approved 383,606.
I'm not asking for, to make a change for this year.
So,
that's-
I think we have, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think we have two different discussions. First of all, you got 383,606 already been allocated. You gotta figure out how you're gonna allocate 75.88% of $1,590,500. And then next year is a separate conversation. And I would like to suggest that we focus on next year outside this.
Well, today we referred this to committee, and we're already 30 minutes into our meeting. So council unanimously, I think, referred this to workshop to decide the remaining portion of this allocation. And we need to get direction, or we need to understand what the distinction is. There've been a couple of,
I've got a proposal out there. Yep.
So we'll take action on this tonight then?
I think we need to get a consensus. It has to be on that. Tell us, I know we can't take action, but what do you need from us in order to put this on the agenda and be done with this?
That's the only proposal, we can easily put that on the agenda.
We would, if there's some consensus, or if that's the direction we wanna go, or we can put it on there for, discussion, we will just draft it as Tom has, stated it, and then council can approve it, not approve it, or amend it.
And we can still consider, what staff is recommending.
So for purposes of the agenda, does anybody have an objection to us putting on the agenda, at least for purposes of resolving the proposal that was made by Mr. Audette? If somebody wants to make a motion to change that, that's fine, but at least for purposes of putting it on the agenda, we would approach it with Mr. Audette's suggestion.
I mean, I
It's
just-
the only option to consider at this point.
I just think we're pushing the same conversation to the next council meeting. I don't understand why we're giving, I don't understand what the numbers are based on. I mean, this whole discussion and the whole goal was to come up with a formula, and we've got numbers that are absolutely not
Well,
based on
actually-
any formula.
But actually, it is based on a formula.
It is.
What he's saying is the formula, actually. What messes the formula up is like, wow.
So I'm offering to fix that.
We can't fix that right now, because you all, or unless you want to reverse the vote on the 383,606, from understanding how council works, that's a done deal.
Who
That
has-
didn't
Well,
fit a
the
formula.
only way to reverse that is to, if you accept that Lake Wiley would get their money back.
Next year. You're talking about next year.
I'm talking about next year, but he's talking about now. He's talking about.
We're talking about the allocation for this year.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Is there any
John's
objection?
suggestion does that, and it gets it close to what the formula actually allocates, except for Lake Wiley. The Lake Wiley allocation generates $403,000, and it was split $201,000 between Clover and Lake Wiley. But that's not what apparently was placed in y'all's budget. 383,606 was placed in your budget, so that's what needed to pass, and that's what y'all passed.
So you just said a few minutes ago that we needed to work on the numbers for Smyrna, Hickory Grove, Sharon, and,
I said you could, because those don't reflect really what they should be getting.
so
Why
we're
don't
gonna add
they use it?
$10,000 to the pot instead of looking at what that should be.
If you take five
I think
off,
the proposal was in
yeah,
part to
good.
try and get the county closer to a population number, which is the
Yeah.
most objective
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
Whether you use a school population, which is not readily available, the only thing that's objectively readily available to us is the unincorporated population numbers.
Isn't that what
And-
staff used?
Mm-hmm.
No, they
No,
didn't.
Does that have to use it?
No.
Staff-
I mean, my personal belief is that none of this happened in a vacuum. The tax that was assessed, and which includes some major commercial businesses in that area, has always been spread out through what I understood was a population number. Now, through efforts that weren't any of this council, trying to get money for Lake Wiley, and all of that money exclusively, as I understand it, has to go to Field Day Park. Is that correct?
That is the tax, they are the recreation provider in that district.
So the funds have to go to that area. What we're trying to do, and what I'd like to see council do, is come up with an allocation that may not be the best thing, but it's because we're not in a vacuum. If we were starting this whole thing over, there are counties and entities that rely on that steady funding to provide the services for all of our community, but that the growth money be allocated under a population number. I can understand your points on that, but I don't understand how we do that. I don't know how we take that and put it into an actual formula, considering those two things, but.
And how do we balance out for, let's say, Rock Hill, who has a slew of parks and they have a lot of facilities, versus looking at an area who doesn't have as many facilities? That could be a hard match, because Rock Hill has all the facilities, majority of them, throughout the county. So, Rock Hill can say, hey, we need more money because we have 30 facilities. York has 12. If you wanna start getting into what's relevant, what's not, how we figure it out, it's probably 10 different things that we can check off as to how we split this money up, if we're gonna go in and nitpick it around.
But I think at this point, population is the most consistent formula. And at least this proposal, at least get it closer to the population. And I'm not saying this is this would at least get it closer. And then we can come up again with a formula to actually be implemented for next year. This here is at least getting us closer based on numbers. And that's the only formula that we currently have.
So you're okay with taking 25% of Clover's money?
Again, I'm making a recommendation. I mean,
I'm just asking you, are you okay with taking 25% of Clover's money?
You voted to approve that. You've
Approve
already
what?
voted for that. You voted on behalf of Lake Wiley for that. That's
No,
not-
that doesn't have anything to do with Clover. I'm talking about, he's taking $50,000
Yeah.
from Clover's $201,000.
So Clover's.
I thought you were okay with that.
No.
I'm asking, I haven't made any,
161.
I've made my one thing. He's thrown out some numbers.
So are they at 201 or are they at 213?
No, they're at 213.
Okay, so start at 213.
Yeah,
So honestly,
213.
Tom would
Yeah.
be taking money from Clover, but
Yeah.
you took money from Clover too, because that's how you got your 383.
I didn't take money from Clover.
You had to, because there's only 403 allocation based on the numbers for Clover and Lake Wiley.
I know,
That's if you're using a municipal, but it's 563 if you use.
If we're trying to get to
Funds.
500 and something thousand for Lake Wiley, that takes from everybody.
We're
So,
not trying to do that.
I mean,
That can't be done.
the only proposal that I've heard though, and we need to move our meeting along, I'm not hearing any other so from what I'm hearing tonight, I haven't heard any consensus that we need to have any additional information brought to us or do anything else. So we just need to put this up for a decision. We need to make the decision. The allocations need to be paid out in July, from what I understand, so we need to make this decision on the 17th at our next council meeting.
And so we're suggesting what Tom has recommended, which is the only recommendation we have.
Anybody can make a different proposal in the form of a motion, but at least from what I'm hearing from this council right here, unless I hear, a majority objection, we'll put it on the agenda as proposed, and then we'll just have to make that decision at our council meeting.
I just
Yeah.
wanna make a comment. I would like to see in the future, Fort Mill and TDK numbers broken out and not combined. If this is from the census, and that should be easy enough to do. And I would think you would want Clover and, wouldn't you want Clover and?
we can break our numbers out.
Yeah.
If there's a way to get those numbers, I think council would like to see that.
Yeah,
You can't use the
Can't
tax
break
district.
breaking out Fort Mill and TDK will be problematic because there's one school district, and you could maybe do high school population, but
So you're going
It
by
would be.
school population.
That's what
It's
this
not the
is.
census.
This is all the school, it's the census
Because
in the school
right
district.
here, it says.
Actually, it's not the census.
Goes into the pot.
school
It's gotta be the
district.
census.
It's
Allocated.
incorporated head counts.
Well, yeah, the census
It
is
is,
per
but that's-
unincorporated.
Let me be clear on this. They are census numbers, and they are the census numbers provided for unincorporated residents of that school district. So what the COG has done is taken out the total number in the Fort Mill Township, removed the population of the city of TKK, removed the population of the city of Fort Mill, and what's left is your unincorporated residents. So those are good census numbers. What you're asking though is to separate Fort Mill from TKK. There is no dividing line between, unless you wanna, I mean, I don't know how you, maybe postal codes or high school attendance zones that separate what's considered TKK, what's considered Fort Mill.
And they're happy
Exactly.
splitting that, they're happy splitting that money.
Yeah, they're happy splitting.
Yeah, there's-
they're happy splitting it. So that's not, that's really not.
It's just not an easy number to provide
No.
for you.
Right,
Okay,
So do-
let's move on.
yeah.
Why don't we?
So do we need a motion to move it to?
Nope,
Okay.
this is just direction,
Okay,
so we'll.
very good.
Update from management, discussion regarding the accommodation tax allocation. Just so that all council's aware, I think we all are by now, that, the proposal that was made at the last council meeting for the A-tax allocation, needs to be reconsidered in light of the ordinance that exists that requires, your consideration to be, devoted to the applications. David, did you want to give us some information before we
Yeah, I'd
started?
like to. You don't have any handouts as of yet, right?
I think we did, we have,
Okay.
Good
okay.
packet.
So you have the, what was voted on. Yeah, if I could, I'd just like to pass along how I've been educated on A-tax over the last few weeks. So I have a better understanding, hopefully you will too. Think of these as buckets. We have a local accommodation, which is the tax that we levy on hotels in the unincorporated area. They're mostly in Fort Mill area, because if you have hotels in Rock Hill and Fort Mill, they are where, in York, they are where the water and sewer is, which is generally where the city limits are. But there are a few in Rock Hill, but the vast majority of unincorporated hotels are in the Carowinds area and the area outside the city of the town of Fort Mill. We collect a 3% A-tax for all of those hotels, and that's a pool of money that we spend separately from what we're discussing tonight. What we are discussing tonight is the state accommodation tax. That's a 2% accommodation tax, again levied on the hotels within the unincorporated area of York County. And that is collected by the state and remitted back to us. That's the pot of money that you divvied up at the last meeting. But before you get to divvy that amount up, there's a statutory way we divvy up that money of that bucket, which is there's $25,000 automatically comes off the top and goes to the county's general fund. Then 5% of what remains from that is also given to the county's general fund.
is that
Third-
ordained by statute?
Yes. 30% of what's left must go to the designated marketing organization for the county, which is the CVB. So they get that, all that's determined. So what you're splitting up, the $123,000, $123,750 is divvied up by, application. We send it to our review board, they make a recommendation to you, and you divvy that up. And what you're limited to is divvying up to people who have made application. And that's where we erred at the last meeting, as we divvied up some money to people that had not made application. So what we need to do tonight is redistribute that among the people who did make application. Then those are, what you have on that top sheet there. So, again, we're not taking votes tonight, but we will need to reach, a decision at the next council meeting on how you would like to split up. And I haven't tried to calculate how much that is that went to, Do we have that number anywhere?
65,000 that was reallocated.
65,000. So that 65,000 needs to go back. And it can go to any of the applicants. It may not go to an applicant in excess of what they applied for. And it must be used based on what they intended to spend it on. So you're free to reallocate it, but just keep those two requirements in mind.
Okay, that was an easy one.
Do we want to have a discussion about this, about what it does? So if I just want to take it with us and we'll put it on the agenda on the 17th. Mr. Huckabee.
Thank you. We did have one applicant that, they've held an event in York County in 2017 that brought people from 50 countries into York County. Had 60,000 attendees. Including airfare, had a $19.2 million direct impact to York County, filled up all 15 of our hotels in unincorporated areas, filled up hotels in Mecklenburg County too. If you include the airfare impact, $29.9 million, which is one reason why Mecklenburg County contributes to this event and is going to contribute to the 2024 event. You had 3,700 cyclists in from 48 countries. 5.5 million social media impressions, 513,000 website views. And in 2024, this event is coming to Rock Hill, is expected to generate 28,000 room nights. Estimated, including airfare, $40 million impact to York County, including Mecklenburg, but to York County, estimated $25 million impact. So they requested $200,000 originally. The York Rock Hill Sports Commission requested $200,000. When we got our packet, it had been reduced to 50, and then when we had our meeting, it had been taken out completely. I would like to request that we have somebody from the Sports Commission come in and share with us a little bit more about this project, about this 2024 World Championship BMX event and the impact it's going to have on York County. This is an accommodations tax, so you're collecting money from people that are using hotels, and you're trying to make an investment back into your economy. And of all the proposals that were on the proposal sheet, I can't think of another one that's worthy of some money than this particular project. So, this is just a little research I've done myself, but I'd suggest we bring someone in. I'd like to hear somebody come in and talk about the impact of this event, because it is substantial.
I would like to see what they get from, you said Mecklenburg County, a lot of people, allocate funds to them. I'd like to see that list of what their funding is. And the reason that when I made that recommendation to remove that $50,750 and put that toward more local things is I believe that we can make a bigger difference with smaller venues, because that $50,000 is a drop in the bucket for them. But they had also just received $500,000 from the state just a couple of days before that. So that's why I felt like some of these smaller events, it would just make a bigger impact for some of the smaller events that were looking to do something in it, but I would like to know, if you say Mecklenburg County contributes and everything, I'd like to see their full list of their contributions, what they get from everybody. Yeah.
This sheet that's on the top, David, that was given to council, so we have copies of all the applications for the funding that coincide with the fiscal 24 requests. And then we have the ATAX committee's recommendation. Is there anything on the, am I just not seeing this? What happened at the last council meeting?
Yeah, I think, is that what this shows? Tim?
It doesn't. The four allocations, you mean?
Yeah, is that what it shows?
Yes.
Yeah, let me pass this out here. This shows, you're asking what was approved at the last meeting, at the
Yeah.
council meeting?
I'm trying to figure out, was there anything that stuck, or do we have to we have to redo it all?
So we gave money to the CVB, so that could stick, and we gave a little bit of money to the NAACP.
What you're gonna see right now explains pretty clearly.
Yeah. I just want to make sure council understands what funding we have to reallocate, how much of it is.
Yeah, the very bottom window there, those last four was,
All right, so we,
taken from
so
the-
basically, we need to strike the last four. We cannot, we
correct.
cannot do those.
We got 75,000,
65.
65.
We have to reallocate it, and none of it can exceed the actual requested amount for the
That is
fiscal
correct.
'24. So when, council, do y'all wanna discuss this, or do y'all wanna take it back with you and you can digest it?
Yeah, I'd rather take it back and digest it. I do have one question though, the 50,000 though for CBB, that was, I see a change from 5,000 to 50. That was the difference in the allocation though from the BMX? Is that where,
Arts Council.
or where did that other additional amount?
So I made the recommendation, so I'll let John explain
Yeah.
that. So I took the, some of, like, the things that the CVB would automatically be, promoting.
Uh-huh.
We took those off and lumped that into the CVB.
Okay.
So, and they had already had a discussion, they had a discussion the next day about supporting some of the ones that were on here, like, they were still gonna promote those. So, because I just, when I made that suggestion, I felt like the CVB was better able to determine who should get the marketing for that.
Well,
Like,
that's why I
they're just
wanna-
more familiar with
I do wanna ask this, in this chart that you showed us, David, 22,000 is showing as council approved to CVB, which was not the ATAX ATAX recommendation was 5, the CVB requested 50. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, that 22 was a deviation or a proposal from the council?
That's what
That
I
is
went up
correct.
to.
Okay,
Yeah, that was part of the.
so that,
Okay.
okay,
What
that
you
was
see
a
on the right
differential.
column is what you voted for last time.
and that one's okay, we just
So-
can't.
so
undo the
we
others.
can go up-
Conceivably go back up to 50,000.
We can go up to
Right.
50,000 to the CBB.
Okay,
And I think part of what, my understanding was that some of the ones that we took funding away from and rolled over to some other areas, by putting more with the CBB, those programs could then now apply and work with the CBB to get marketing, to get some of those funds. So we're not completely cutting them out. We're saying, hey, we're shifting a little bit more money over to the CBB. You can apply for them, for those funds, you can work with them to still achieve those marketing dollars for your program.
Right.
So that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah.
If we shift more towards the
so,
CBB.
so with the CVB, we could, just for argument's sake, we could add 28,000, is my math right? We could add 28 more thousand, we can't go more than that though, of the 65.
Yeah.
That is
So-
correct.
No.
Yeah.
So based on that
Yeah.
discussion, Allison, though.
We can go up to 50,000 to the CBB.
Right. And I like what the CBB's doing. I mean, they've really been taking off on a lot of good
Yeah.
things. So that, how did that discussion go with that
Hang on,
group?
let me clarify, because I wanna make
Yeah,
sure
what
everybody
you
understands this.
don't have in this chart is you have the accommodation tax, oh, that particular one is wrong, is that what you're telling me, Kevin?
Would they request?
The
would
50,
Garth-
that, the CVB requested $200,000, I think if you look at there. So
I thought it
it's,
was 50.
I think we
Right,
just
because
stated
there's
that.
200 on.
Pardon me?
The CVB requested 200,000?
No,
No.
no,
Requested
50,000.
50.
It's 50.
It was
No.
200 under the
BMX requested 200,000.
Yep.
They requested $350,000 was the amount they requested.
The CVB?
CVB's, if you go to their application, they requested $350,000.
Yeah, but that's what they normally get plus the 50.
No, this was an application for the state accommodation taxes.
So this is
So,
not.
and
That's been wrong on
this-
every
This
chart.
sheet's wrong.
You can look at this a couple of ways, but again, trying to be very technical about this. Their application that they submitted to the committee was $350,000. You cannot give an amount that exceeds that. I talked with Garth about this, and there was an assumption made about the 300 minus the 50. You can look at it either way, honestly, but
Oh, I see what you-
their application is for $350,000, so you cannot give them more than the $350,000.
But you think what they
Of
intended-
state tax. No, I'm not speaking on, I'm not gonna speak on what the CVB intended, I've not spoken with the CVB, I'm just saying, you go by the letter of law, their application, and that's in the package you were given, is for $350,000.
Yeah, but you got it written above 300K allocated on the document.
Right, we gave them 300 from
Right,
our other
and that's-
pot of money.
Right, that's what you,
So I don't know that that necessarily precludes them from getting more of this, based, that's what you're trying to say, Kevin.
Correct, they're, like, I'll give you an example, they're a designated marketing entity, okay, so that's, I think, $90,000. They're gonna get just because of that. That does not go towards their application.
Right.
That's what they get
Right.
because of that.
I think they could apply for more. I mean, I don't think we just done.
And I'm going by trying to be very legalistic about this, and we missed the detail about the applications first go around. Amount requested says $350,000, and that's the amount you cannot exceed on your allocation of the 123.
So we can give them that full 65,000.
Right, and
Instead
I
of
think
five.
that's what we're saying, but it can only be used for the items that they stipulated in their request. So if we give them more money, they have to perform the functions they said they were gonna perform.
But was it not just general
Marketing, they had-
marketing?
Again, speaking with Garth about
I'm
this
not
morning,
familiar
they,
enough with all that.
marketing was one of the priorities they listed.
They could market anything, they could market
They could.
whatever.
Yeah, so
But
but
if-
based on your conversation though, it went, the other groups.
Oh, yeah, the CVB was very excited to get the money, and they had already had a meeting and discussed like how they would allocate it, and that they would take some of the ones that we pulled from here
Okay.
into, I talked to Brown Simpson, and so, and he was, saying that they would pull from, like, what they got to, they were very aware of this list of
Right.
who had applied and gotten money.
Okay, so they were gonna reach out, and then the people that know how to go to CBB to apply, then I think based on what you were saying, like, from an education standpoint, they go to CBB and apply for future
And
support.
and basically, they're gonna partner with the CVB. to do
Right, to
more.
partner
Yeah.
with, right.
Okay, so, unless I hear objection from council, what we're planning on doing is we'll put this on the agenda for allocation of the remaining 65,000, and I think council understands the parameters we have to work within to make that allocation known.
And then next
I would
year,
say next
county
year,
can apply.
county needs to apply.
Definitely.
All right, last thing. Management update and discussion regarding concurrency study.
Yeah, just an update. We did update you last workshop, and just so happens there's the final, or the preliminary report will be presented at the August workshop. So this is just telling you kind of where we are with that. We have begun the process, and they're addressing and intend to issue their report at the next workshop. Be a summary of findings on the statutory basis for what we're doing as a school capacity component. Provide a summary of what they heard from the school districts and how we may set the parameters to, for the implementation of a school capacity program, and then what impacts such a program might have on impact fees and that sort of thing. And this was, the scope that we asked them to work on was primarily for schools, or was for schools, and the impacts of schools. How if the school was to, if we were doing adequate public facilities ordinance for schools, this is what we're gonna get a report on. Adequate public facilities can address any number of things: fire departments, roads, water, sewer, all that sort of thing. We do have something of a program for both water and sewer and for roads. So I don't know that we need to evaluate that, but what you're gonna get a report on is what they've done for schools. If you would like to add to that scope, which I've spoken with Council Member Love, and I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I know that you did have an interest in exploring some of those other options. I think, we would need to identify for the consultant what those components would be. I think fire might be a good one. I do think, we could put parks in there, but what I would suggest is we hear from them in August on what they found so far. The underlying framework for this would be the same if we choose to add additional components of adequate or additional facilities, but they would still need to determine what's already been provided in those areas and what needs to be provided. So it is an expansion of their scope. Would take 3 months or so to add those pieces, and there would be some additional funding required for that. So if
They can give us the list of things that it could include.
Yes.
That's what, yeah.
So, So the question I got is that, you know, the money has to come from somewhere, right? And when you start pushing that allocation, say for example, on the schools, that's just gonna trickle back to the taxpayers based on their millage rates they're gonna charge back.
It should be, this would be designed, and this is what they can certainly talk about, designed to be placed on the developer for the, whoever's causing the impact. We have a very similar statute in place for our roadways with requirement for a traffic impact analysis. We look at what impact you're bringing of a subdivision, a shopping center, a hotel, whatever it is. We look at what impact you're bringing for the traffic, and we quantify what improvements would be, need to be made to mitigate that impact. So if that's a turn lane or a traffic signal or additional curb cuts, and we have a way to charge that developer for those improvements. And I think the school, adequate public facilities ordinance, or any of our public facilities would require the same thing. So that developer would have to pay it. It works similar to, say, a impact fee where the people that are building the houses have to pay it. You know, that's, I guess that's a little different in that the developer, I guess the argument is who's paying the school impact fee? Is it the homeowner, the developer, the builder? You know, it all comes from the maximum somebody can pay for a house. But in this case, the developer would pay for these impacts up front before they build houses for anything. They would quantify what impact, how many students they're generating, what impact they're having on the schools that the schools have not already addressed, and then they would have to pay for that impact. So it wouldn't necessarily fall on the taxpayer, it would fall on the developer who's bringing the development there. Now that's gonna get passed along to whoever's buying the house in some form,
Yeah.
just like an
So-
impact fee would.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, but it seems like this is kind of a mixed conversation. I mean, it seems, when it comes to building schools, as opposed to development, I mean, building schools, they have certain funds where they draw from to build a school, and if the school is required to put in turn lanes and
Not
et
the
cetera-
school.
Tom, think
Not the
about,
school.
TIA is a very good example of this, okay? They pay, if they're gonna impact an intersection that's gonna cost $1 million and they're deemed to contribute 30% to that, they pay the county $300,000. We hold that money until it's time to build that intersection. How this could, and again, I'm not gonna do this exactly how it works, but if a development's coming in with 1,000 homes up there in your area, okay, and they're deemed to contribute half the cost of elementary school, 25% of a high school, something like that, they would have to stroke a check for that. The school district would hold that until they go to build the middle school or high school. I mean, I think, David, you disagree.
Yeah,
you're
I
good, Mark,
just-
but
yeah,
Well-
the best analogy is the TIA and how that works with the funding of, and the money being paid.
I think there's gonna be a lot of questions that council has. Number one, what is concurrency? What does it cover? What can it cover? But I think importantly, how does the impact fee factor into that? Does that end up causing a problem for the concurrency? But what I'm hearing you say, David, is that council can be prepared to ask those questions in August. You're gonna have them here in
That's
August.
absolutely what I would suggest, is have those questions ready for them at that time.
So we're gonna be asking developers to contribute directly to schools? Or-
No, what we're doing is we're evaluating concurrency from the consultant to determine, for council to ask questions about what concurrency is. It's not used in the state. And I think that's, what I'm hearing you say, David, is we need to have all our questions
Right.
ready and prepared for August. This
But to
guy's
answer
gonna
your
come.
question, that is how adequate public facilities ordinances work, yes. Now, specifically, I would like you to ask those, they'll present and explain all that, but then you feel free to ask them anything at that point.
And council could decide at that moment, we don't think it's worth it
Yeah,
for us to
absolutely.
move
There's a lot of work
forward.
to be done before we can implement that, so I think that'll be your first introduction to whether or not you wanna do it.
Does anybody else in the state of South Carolina use concurrency?
Not that I'm aware of, for, at least not for schools. There may be some in place for other uses, I'm not sure.
So August, we'll look forward to that. Anything else? We don't have any executive session item. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.